Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 85th episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. In this episode, I'd like to talk about two distinct things, just ideas that popped into my head as I was thinking about various things. First topic is babies and something called, I don't know if you say it in English, but basically it's when teenage pregnancies are in denial of being pregnant and don't tell anyone. There's a very interesting physical phenomenon happening, and also something about how the baby sort of gains a sense of identity as it grows. And then networks, as in, new technologies that are developing right now, and how that could help bring about networks, human networks that are much more diverse and dynamic. So, first thing is pregnancy denial. And I find this quite fascinating because a friend of mine has his mom is basically a nurse that handles pregnant women, and there's this phenomenon of teenage girls that are pregnant but are in denial about it. And what's fascinating is that from the outside, if you look at them, like even towards the end of pregnancy, their belly is virtually flat. Like you wouldn't suspect that there's a baby in there at all. They're like really flat. There's no sign that there's a baby. And it's only at birth that there's this phenomenon where they're like lying down, and then this suddenly the stomach just sort of inflates right before birth, like the baby just appears out of nowhere. And they have no real physiological explanation for this. Um, but it's really a fascinating phenomenon that you can persuade your body that it is not pregnant, and that like it's almost like the baby has its own version of reality, and it's like in a parallel dimension, and the mother is in its own dimension and reality. And since both of them sort of have to be right, because everybody's always right in this universe, everything is about beliefs and living your beliefs, then it's only when the mother sort of accepts the facts that the physiological phenomenon of the belly sort of inflating and becoming big actually happens. Otherwise, like the baby is its own bubble reality, saying I exist, I'm here, but give it takes whatever space that the mother's willing to give. And maybe probably because they don't even go for a checkup or anything. um, I don't even know where they exist, probably in another dimension, I don't know. But it's really a fascinating phenomenon. And then it also got me thinking about um, like how the baby sort of gains a sense of identity. Now, obviously, there is the whole lineage, of other generations and all that stuff, like its past, that are kind of like its roots. But I find that like people interacting from the family from the outside that are there, um, interacting with the baby, is kind of like the messages we're receiving from various alien civilizations. Um, all in the universe is just an exchange of information always. And so the baby, every single experience it has with the mother while still in the womb, even though everything is filtered, like it can only hear so much inside the womb, but still what little it can hear is already things that it picks up as information, that it probably doesn't know what to make of it, but still. Um, and I'm wondering if that's not the same for us here on this planet, even like, astrology. If, the other planets are not kind of like our uncles and aunts, with like their relationship with our planet isn't kind of like uncles and aunts from the same family. Um, and each one having their own children, probably like a Mars civilization that, of course, is in another dimension, obviously, because um, um, you only get in touch with the people that are similar to you once you're outside of the womb, basically, like in physical. But you can still glimpse some information from Venus, Mars, or whatever, from the 5D where they are still they exist, basically, um, and they also probably influence us globally as a collective. Um, so that was one thing that I wanted to talk about. Now, another thing probably on astrology, just a little side note. Um, there are people that think that astrology is the end all be all. Like basically the planets are aligned in a certain alignment. Then you're going to suffer the consequences and all this and all that. I just find it rather as a general kind of global environment that is more favorable for one thing or towards another thing. So, for instance, when the planets are in a certain alignment, it's more favorable for travel or more favorable for projects to become mature or not favorable. But it doesn't mean a sort of a fate, like an absolute fate that something is going to happen in a certain way. And I gave the comparison to one person I was discussing with. I gave the example of, for instance, you're going swimming into the ocean, and of course, when the waters are calm and there are no waves, well, it's easier to swim in the ocean. I mean, the experience you get of swimming in the ocean is just like a breeze. It's really comfortable. When there are really big waves, it's still possible to swim in the ocean. It's just that your experience swimming in the ocean is going to be different. It's going to probably be more difficult. Oops. And so you're going to have to, move with the waves and put in a little bit more effort. And the people that take astrology, numerology, or all these things for granted and just like say, okay, the planets are in this alignment, I can't do anything, is as if you were trying to swim in the ocean when it's all wavy and stuff, as if it was flat. So basically, you make no effort, you make no extra effort because you're convinced that these waves are going to crush you. And if you try and just lie flat here and do nothing, well, guess what your experience is going to be in those waves? You're going to get crushed, obviously. So there's this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy of your attitude towards all these omens, for instance, and the influences around us that determine the degree to which you're going to be affected. And everybody will agree that winter affects you in a certain way. And if you don't get outside, if you don't go outside with a coat, you're going to freeze to death. And everybody would agree that if you don't make a little extra effort when the sea is really stormy and wavy, then you're going to drown or you're going to have a very bad experience. And it's the same way with, astrology and all the things above. And there's also this hierarchy that we tend to put between what is material and what is above material, like 5D or whatever. And we tend to say that like this is on level, this is one level, this is level two, like it's superior or something. When that's not the case. Like people are now trying to put it like a hierarchy of something is better than the other or something has more influence than the other. But ultimately, everything is in its rightful place, and things have power over you depending on how much power you give them. And this example with the waves is exactly the point. Obviously, there is a maximum. Like if the sea is really too stormy, then it's really about being smart about your own capabilities. But you're still not going, and then you just avoid going swimming. Not because the sea is evil or because you are a insignificant insect as a human compared to an angel that is in the seventh dimension and whatever is too powerful for you. We never see that in that way. We just see that everything is in its rightful place. And when we see the sea that is really extremely stormy, we don't think that there is any problem with us as humans. We don't belittle our significance or our power. We just say, it's not for me now. It's too much for me now. I'm just going to wait for it to calm down. Then I'm going to go swimming again. And I think it's nice to sort of desacralize this and stop seeing things as levels, and just view it in a more open kind of way rather than deterministic or this fascination. And I also have had a whole period where I was fascinated by everything: numerology, astrology, aliens, Pleiadians, ascended masters, everything. And ultimately, why would that be any more interesting or important than, learning about plants or swimming in the ocean or learning about tides, learning about math, learning about cooking? Um, Again, like in the universe, in the absolute, there is no hierarchy. And our fascination with these things is just a mirror of how we were fascinated with other things just 3 or 4 centuries ago by science. And I think it's a good time right now, when we're in this process of sort of awakening, that we disconnect from that fascination and come back to right here, right now, and see things as very natural and normal. Um, and not in a hierarchical way, because I think it's actually a dead end to see this, like fleeing the material and quickly going to the 5D. It's more like this process of integration. Um, it's really, really important. And in integration, there's no place for this kind of hierarchy or fascination of something that is good and leaving something that is bad. Next topic is networks. So in the last few video, I was talking about the human network, that basically each of us is like a node in a network. And right now we're really starting to function as a network rather than like a pyramid. So in the past, it was more this pyramidal structure where you had a priest, politician, scientist, I mean, you name it, just someone that basically you delegated authority to, and that told everyone else what to think and believe. And then it sort of created a power structure and an influence over reality where you delegated your power to somebody else. So it's almost like you've willingly imagine, like every single person is like a pixel. And then the reality that we see is um, sort of a feedback loop where, like, you choose your color here, as like every human is a pixel, you choose your color, and then the reality you experience is a feedback of this image that you navigate inside, okay, that you navigate in. If you decide that you're not going to be in charge of what color you choose to pick, and you decide to delegate that color to another human and say, okay, I believe this scientist because, for whatever reason he has PhDs, or I believe this priest because he was entrusted by God of the truth, then you give them the power to change what you're projecting onto that sort of screen that becomes reality, and you abdicate your power, you delegate it. And the whole idea is for each person to reclaim that power, but not breaking the links and the network effect. We're still in a network, we're still connected. And a network, like in your brain, for instance, and the links between your neurons, still produces something coherent, but not to the point where it's so coherent that is uh, monochrome. Let's put monochrome. Like one single dominant ideology, like capitalism winning over communism, or scientific materialism winning over spirituality, or and the same for biology. For instance, if you look at the diversity of life, of biology, of all the living beings that are there are links between plants, between animals, between insects. All of that is like an ecosystem that interacts in a certain manner, as in a network. And a network where it's not really this pyramid kind of structure, a network where it's you have diversity and still producing coherency, like coherence in the form of what we would call an ecosystem. And what we need to do is that biology already does that. It's fine in doing an ecosystem. We've just broken out of biology because we are the bridge between biology and something else, which I call the world of ideas and thought. That is what we produce beyond biology, that is not in the realm of biology. And now the idea is to produce the same thing, an ecosystem of ideas and thought. And in that sense, decentralized technology and governance is absolutely key. And that's very concrete, actually. It's not spiritual at all. But if you just look at all the projects that are out there in terms of cryptocurrencies, blockchain, and all that stuff, and you have a myriad of new projects that are coming up and that have different governance structures. Some of them are delegated structures where you basically delegate your vote to someone else, but not one person. Typically, it's a group of persons, and at any time you can change where you sort of attribute your vote. Or you have ones where the vote, you cannot delegate your vote. You actually have to be involved proactively in the network. You cannot surrender your voting power to someone else. And you have so many also systems emerging for achieving a sort of coherence or consensus on certain ideas. Like, for instance, you have the platform Kielo. You have Reddit, for instance. That's a very interesting platform for where you can get points for being recognized as a proactive member in your community. You have Discord, where you have channels where people can interact and get together on certain projects. And this is just the tiny little bit, the tiny beginnings of decentralized governance and decentralized technologies, where basically we're moving away from this pyramidal structure, which also creates these giants like Facebook or Google, which are also kind of this pyramid structure where it's one huge centralized network that centralizes everything under the control of one single power or being or person, Mark Zuckerberg, and then decides that every single human is going to have the same experience. Now, imagine a world where, for instance, your data as an individual, every data you produce is not now spread across plenty of servers where, like, Google tries to capture all of your data, and then Facebook all of your data, and everybody's just out for all of your data, and then locks you in your ecosystem and tries to suck up as much data as it can about you. Imagine if you could pick wherever you want to store your data, for instance, a cloud service of your choice, maybe even decentralized cloud of your choice, like Saya, for instance, Skynet, which I'm a big fan of, by the way. And then you authorize various decentralized services that you choose to have access to parts of that data, and you can decide to disconnect to sever that link whenever you want. And so the services you use actually have access, do not host a single megabyte about you. They don't know nothing. They don't know anything about you. All they know is that they grant you access. Like, for instance, I don't know, Mastodon, let's say. It's like an alternative to Twitter. Imagine if it connects to your personal cloud because you gave it authorization, and then it can put you in touch with friends or people that you want to be in touch with via that interface. And if you're not happy with Mastodon, then you just sever this link and go to another, like, what I think Diaspora is now dead, but let's say Diaspora, which is another open source social network alternative to Facebook. And now you say that service has access to your data, the same data. So you don't have to move your data around. You just change interfaces for displaying it, for processing it, for ordering it, and in a way that is convenient for you. And there's just so much potential there. For instance, you could also have a liberalization of algorithms. Right now, for instance, who gets to choose what you see on your social media newsfeed. The proprietary algorithm that Facebook chooses, which is tweaked based on trying to keep you there as long as possible, which translates into, finding out what you're interested in or what triggers you, especially, and then feeding that over and over again to you to get you addicted. And the more time you spend, the more ad revenue is generated, and so the more money you make for Facebook because you're exposed to more ads. But imagine that you could go on any social media, even a decentralized social media, that you would get to choose in a dialog box various algorithms for filtering the information that is displayed to you inside those networks. And those algorithms can be developed by plenty of different people. And they would get a little bit of money every time somebody chooses their algorithm because it has it's tweaked in the right way. For instance, you could choose an algorithm that is uh, programmed to make you discover new things that you actually never heard about or that are original or whatever. Like one day you'd say, show me something new, something completely out of my league, out of my interest or whatever. I just want to know something completely different. And another day you'll say, show me something more, and you have like personalized algorithms that you can choose from. And with cryptocurrencies, oops, crypto assets rather, you can have micropayments that remunerate the creators of interfaces, the creators of algorithms, the creators of decentralized governance technology. And every time you interact with something, you can just pay them 0.01 cents and aggregate it to millions and millions. The creators of those can get a decent income from that. And again, you see the tiny first emergence of those technologies, like for instance, the Brave browser, which I use, for instance, and its basic attention token, which is a new model for a sort of a transparent advertising model online. But that's just one out of a million projects emerging. And that bubbling up of all those new solutions to me is the form that this takes, transitioning from this pyramid structure in both the way society is organized, like for instance under one state, one set of politicians, one set of scientists that get together in a room of 10 and decide that everybody has to wear masks, everybody has to stay home, nobody can go out after 6 o'clock in the evening, nobody can travel, nobody can this and that, to a world where it's more about networks and communities forming inside those networks, interacting with each other and cross fertilizing each other. And at the same time, these like you decide as a neuron in that network who you want to link up to and sever those links if you want, and then link up to other things as you evolve. And that to me is really mirroring the way our brain works, where every neuron sort of connects to other neurons, but then changes the connections, and everything sort of always is in constant shift, but never losing the coherence. And so, it's not like we just all become our own human, disconnected from the human network. I want to live in my own bubble reality. That happens when you go into your dream state, and you're in your own kind of world, um, your own version of the astral plane, where everything happens instantly at will. But that doesn't create something coherent. It's just your own kind of way to evolve in your own little bubble. But the higher way of evolving is through these interactions, but in a much richer way than this pyramid structure, which is very monochrome and not very diverse. But of course, I'm not saying that this is bad by any standard. I'm just saying that it's outdated for a simple reason that, this way of directing how humanity sort of evolves is again what happens before birth, during pregnancy, where the stem cells of the baby are told how to evolve, and you transform yourself into being a stomach, and you transform yourself into being the skin, and you transform yourself, and these are the plans, and these are the schematics, and this is what you have to do, and blah 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 blah. But once all of those organs are in place, then what the baby actually starts doing in the world, its actions, where it chooses to crawl, what it chooses to experience, that cannot be this kind of pyramid structure. It has to be some kind of neural network, and not this kind of one directional, monochrome sort of way of evolution and progress. So I hope you found this interesting. Don't hesitate to leave a comment, and talk to you in the next video.